So I am very excited to introduce to you who our speakers are. Maybe speakers, when I say your name, you can give a little wave. So we've got Iris, who's the conference director at Iris Meck Communications, Laura MacNeil, who's the founder and CEO of Carib Farm, and Jocelyn Molyneux. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and founder and CEO of Wastenot Farms and Jocelyn's Soil Booster. So each of these speakers are going to take us through a quick journey of their entrepreneurial journey and how they get started. So Iris, I'm going to invite you to kick us off.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I'm so happy to be here and to meet all of you. I run the Advancing Women Conference. I founded it in 2014. And I've been in agriculture all of my career, coming from a farm in Manitoba, working for a multinational for 11 years, and then working with private industries for public relations and marketing. I started my own company in 1999. And since then, I've sold my company twice, and now I'm part of a division of farms.com. I think that's it.
Fantastic, short and sweet. I love it, Iris. Yeah, we'll get into all the nitty-gritty pieces for our panel discussion. Thank you so much. All right, next up, I'm going to invite Laura to talk about herself.
Hi, morning, everybody. I'm just outside Toronto, so it's still morning, just on the edge. Anyways, I am the founder of Carib Farm, which is a social impact startup. And I just wanted to say I'm really happy to be here. I'm honored, in fact. And we've had quite a journey. As an early stage startup, we've still been at it since probably about 2020, 2021, we incorporated. And our whole goal is to provide a digital knowledge hub for small scale farmers. And so where we started out was in the global south. And the reason being was that at that time, I was living on a small island called Grenada in the Caribbean. And one of the hats that I wore, because I wore lots of them, was to manage our market garden. My husband's the farmer, really. And so what happened was things were going along well, and then we would encounter these really big problems. It was an organic farm, and we couldn't get help. We couldn't get answers to problems. And I'm pretty tech savvy, so it should have been what I thought should have been easy, turned out to be really complicated and challenging. So I got brave and I went and talked to some of the other local farmers, and they told me the same thing. Everybody was having the same problems. They couldn't get answers. They couldn't get advisors to the place. And so at the same time, I was studying with the Interaction Design Foundation in the Netherlands, and I thought to myself, I wonder if we could kind of like bridge this knowledge gap by introducing a solution in mobile technology. And so that's where my crazy idea came from. And I've been working on it ever since. I went back to school, did a postgrad, and where I had the opportunity to build out a prototype and have been involved in many different accelerators and incubators globally and locally. And it's been a roller coaster. We're now under the umbrella of BioEnterprise Canada, which is awesome. And that means that we're supported as one of their new innovative ag techs. So I'm here in Canada now, and we're still implementing our beta testing across the Caribbean and Latin America with a section of our team. I have an amazing team of volunteers. Other than that, it's just me. And I'm happy to be here and happy to share any of the challenges that we've faced and answer any questions somebody might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Appreciate that. And Jocelyn, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Molyneux. As mentioned, my business is Wastenot Farms. What we do is we collect food waste. We bring it up here to the farm. We feed it to red wiggler worms. I have somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 4 million in my barn. And then a couple months later, we're able to harvest that worm manure and use it as the foundation for a line of all natural regenerative soil products that we brand as Jocelyn's Soil Booster. I have been working on this business for over a dozen years now, and I've always considered myself a garbage geek. And in fact, I completed my master's in waste management. And it was during that time that I went and worked at a big waste management company here in Toronto called Turtle Island Recycling. This was back when it was okay to appropriate Indigenous names for corporate consumerism. And, you know, I felt really excited day one working for a responsible recycling company. And the owner pulled me aside and he said, listen, Jocelyn, you know, we charge clients extra for composting. They want that service. They want to feel good. But it's really all going to a landfill in Michigan with all the other garbage because it's way cheaper for us to do that. And my heart kind of broke at that moment because, you know, at that point it wasn't as well known, these challenges in the waste industry. And I'd had my own red wiggler worms in the backyard, and it really was a light bulb moment for me. And I said, you know, why aren't we using worms on a commercial scale to turn all this excellent organic matter back into the soil and put all those nutrients back where they came from? So that is what I set out to do in 2013. And I was able to zone in on office composting as an opportunity. There was a gap in the market that I had identified where there was small tenant offices, often in a larger building, where there was no compost available. So we provided a boutique white glove service. We would, you know, and by we, I mean it was me climbing, you know, 7 flights of stairs, keying in the alarm code, wiping up the garbage juice, hauling the compost on my back down the 7 stairs. And so that business actually was growing quite well for 7 years. We were up to about 50 clients. We were on track to do $250,000 in recurring revenue in 2020. And given the year, perhaps you can guess what happened. And we were servicing offices. So March 13th, I woke up with a business about to raise some capital, and I went to bed without much anything at all because all the offices shut down. So not only did I lose all my revenue, I also lost all the food for my worms because by then we were processing a significant amount of waste. So like so many businesses, we had to quickly pivot, you know, try some other options. And in hindsight, it was very lucky. We were certainly one of the luckiest. We did already have our first product in market. So that is our worm manure product. It's a super concentrated natural microbial fertilizer. And so we were able to really focus on growing our product-based business. And we really sort of shifted from a service business to more of a manufacturing type business. And we also started working more closely with our agricultural neighbors to bring in that food for the worms. So everything from waste sheep wool, spent brewery grains, horse manure, and then of course there are some premium restaurants and Good Lot Brewery, for example, that are also working with us to feed those worms. I'm very proud to say that we have now been able to return to a more holistic circular model. So we are, in fact, reopening our waste services. So there is that demand that has returned with people back in the offices and with so much concern around climate change. And most critically, we successfully raised $500,000 at the end of last year to invest in the business. And we did it in a really interesting way. We brought on a community of over 40 investors, a lot of small individual female angels that had never invested before. So I look forward to talking a bit more about that later on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Congrats on that raise. That's fantastic. I'm sure there's a few people, including myself, that are interested in learning more about that process as well, especially with the 40 different investors as well. Yeah, would love to learn more. All right, well, hopefully that gives you a good sense of who our speakers are, what their journey's been like. So maybe there's some questions noodling in your head. To anyone who missed the start, maybe I'll just clarify. We've got some great questions that we've planned out for our speakers to answer. We've kind of designed it out so there's a good flow to our conversation. We're hitting hopefully all the buckets that you're looking for some advice in today, but we will prioritize your questions. So if you would like to ask a question, you can use the raise hand function and ask on camera, or you can ask in the chat, and I can ask on your behalf as well. Alrighty, so speakers, we'll get started. So a blanket question to all of you. So based on each of your unique experiences, what have been the most crucial initial steps that you've taken or that you think entrepreneurs should take when considering starting a business in the agricultural sector in Canada? Iris, maybe I'll pass to you first.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Well, first of all, I think everybody that's in this group is so past the initial stages of being an entrepreneur. But just to review the things that I did when I first started out was to decide what market you're going after and how big it is, what the existing competition is, how you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And for me, it was focusing on women in agriculture. I think it's really important to find a good lawyer, a good legal counsel, good accounting and for tax advice. Also defining the market needs, maybe get a advisory committee together that you can get their input in before you start anything else new. I think what's most important though is to get a mentor and use that mentor for long-term direction and short-term direction, and provide honest input and feedback. Some people try to do it as a sales promotion of something that they're trying to sell. But I think finding your own mentor that can be honest to you is very important. And the second thing that I think is very important is to build a network and use your network and learn how to use a network. A network is only important to those who don't have one. And I think that when people think about building a network, they think of just gathering a name and somebody that they can call. But it's also getting information from them, getting more contacts from them, getting some context from them as information as to how to do better or expand or learn something new. And the third is to build credibility. If you don't have credibility, then you can't take that next step of building your own brand. And so connect yourself with major leaders and stakeholders in the industry that you can then build that credibility and get your value quotient up and then build a strong brand. And be ready for expenses that you never expected. That's the biggest thing that I have.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Iris. And I think with the networking aspect as well, and I mean, great that we're all here today, and that's definitely a piece of the puzzle there, is also ensuring that it's a two-way street with networking, right? So like what can you offer your network as well, rather than it just being a kind of a take from people as well. So always thinking about how can I help this person as well as how can they help me as well. Laura, any critical steps that you took in your initial stages that you feel have benefited you in where you are?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. First of all, I want to reiterate the networking thing. I spent a very, very long time building a network. And because our solution is focused on the global south, it was a really big network, and it went across, many countries. And so when I had an opportunity to say, join an organization we were lucky enough to be involved in the Food Systems Game Changers Lab, which was part of the Food Summit in 2021, where I met amazing people across the globe. This allowed me to get my head around what would people, in Southeast Asia do with a solution like ours, or what would they do in Africa or Central America. And so that was one of the things that really, really opened my mind to yes, this can be a global solution. And it was the help of those people. And the other thing, so networking is key. And you can never think too big. And I think also is that one of the key lessons I learned from a lot of tech gurus, I spent several weeks last year in Silicon Valley. But before that even was that is that to always keep the problem in the forefront. And somebody had said to me to fall in love with your problem, the problem, and not your solution. So that we always keep asking over and over again, how has the problem changed for small scale farmers? What does the horizon look like? What are people anticipating? And so to try and always be that little step ahead, not that you can always be, but to anticipate and to really ask the questions and not make assumptions. We're constantly asking farmers, tell us what your problems are. When you ask somebody what their problems are, they answer. They really do. And so not to talk about your solution. When I first did all of the discovery interviews and testing, my advisors, who were brilliant, and the venture lab, had said to me, you're not permitted to mention your solution. You're not permitted to mention anything about it. You're just doing research. And so that gave us unbiased answers. And that's what you need. You don't need a lot of them, but they need to be unbiased. So fall in love with the problem.
I love that, Laura, because also your solution can evolve and change, and most likely will, with like most businesses. So keeping the problem at the forefront will allow you to be agile if it needs to change, and all of that, and or rather even open to changing. So that's fantastic advice, and applicable, I feel, in not just business and in so many different things as well. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks. Yeah, we pivot a lot.
Yeah, and speaking of pivoting, Jocelyn, I'm so curious to, because it sounds like even before that March 13th, you were already thinking about diversifying your business and your revenue streams. So like what were those steps that you took even before that you feel really helped put you into that position to be able to do that?
Yeah, well, you know what? So a lot of the things I was going to mention have already been brought up. Certainly, Iris is mentioning this idea of finding a great mentor. You can't have enough great mentors, that's for sure. You want to stand on the shoulders of giants. And, credibility is another really big thing, because there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of, can give a lot of talk, but don't necessarily follow through. So, it's really about establishing that credibility, which for me was, doing the things that I said I was going to do. I did not grow up on a farm. I did not come to this business by anything other than, determination, or probably what some people would consider to be quite stubbornness. And I can assure you, I grew up in downtown Toronto. My parents were not happy that this was the direction I was taking my career. But I was really passionate. And one of the best first things that happened was I was accepted in at the Center for Social Innovation, which is a startup incubator. They had a program specifically for food and ag, and really learned how to create a minimum viable product. So to Laura's point about market research and not really focusing on your solution, but really coming to understand the problem, that is for sure job number one. Absolutely critical. You want to try and interview as many people with as many diverse perspectives on the industry, on the problem as possible. And that ends up being really useful down the road as well, because the language they use, you want to really be tracking that, is in fact the language you're going to want to use in your marketing, to be identifying and to be targeting the correct market. I would actually probably say that I went in a different direction than Iris. Frankly, my experience with lawyers are you're going to pay a lot of money and you're not really going to get much out of it. So hold off on that as long as possible. They will always, this is a big thing with lawyers, they're always going to tell you the worst case scenario. They're going to make you scared. That's their job. That's how they get paid. And so just, take their advice with a grain of salt. And certainly I would, the two other things, is if you're not experienced in building a minimum viable product and why that's so critical, why you don't want to spend a lot of time in R&D, but instead get that product out into market, start getting feedback, then definitely be looking up that whole theory and why it's so critical. Another thing I like to suggest often, especially, you know, I do a lot of presentations more for the environmental industry, is this idea of expertise. And it's one thing to say build a network, but to the point earlier around bringing value to that network, one of the best ways to do that is by being an expert in something very specific. You know, you'll never be an expert in everything, but you can certainly become an expert in something very specific. And then the value that you bring to any connection, any network is much higher because you have something that other people don't have. Supply and demand, of course. So I always say, you know, pick something and really focus, learn as much as you can, get the experience, and that's really going to set you apart from some of the competition.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Some really great advice from each of you. And Iris, you know, you've been working in the sector for so long. So given your experience on working with various different agricultural corporations, what are some of the key market gaps or maybe emerging needs you see in the Canadian agriculture sector that present strong opportunities for new ventures?
Well, I have been in the industry for a long time, and those gaps are getting filled as we go on. I think new technology is something that's that there are a lot of gaps in. However, there's a lot of competition in that area as well. So when you're looking at starting a new technological invention or innovation, for example, I was talking to somebody the other day, and all grain companies, all equipment manufacturers have a program and a platform that they can suggest, you know, how deep you're seeding, what you're seeding, what the rate of seeding is, the spraying of that product. But nobody's brought it all together to have all of that data all in one place. Everybody thinks the collection of data is most important, but nobody's quite been able to put it all in one location, all in one program and platform. So I think that the gaps are getting filled, but I think there's a lot of space in food innovation, especially when you're talking about nutrition and health. I think that's a really important area that is not totally filled yet to date. But also there's a lot of wellness products that are coming out. You look at what beef tallow has done in the last year. Instead of using facial products that are commercially made, a lot of companies are coming out with beef tallow. And again, they are all the same or pretty close to the same because they're using that same base product. So I think that between technology and food and nutrients, that's where the gaps are, I think, in my perception today.
Excellent. Yeah, and yeah, it's a great example of the beef tallow as well as such a like the byproduct, I guess, that people are finding these fun ways of using them. Iris, I know we said we wouldn't go off script, but there was something to talk about on the speaker call last week that just came back into my mind that I feel like it would be important to talk about. When, you know, it feels like agriculture is kind of you know, kind of everywhere now, or it's on people's minds. And you brought up a great point of that it's not that it's just come out of nowhere, that it's not like I can't remember the exact words we used, but like that it was growing a lot. And you spoke very well to it in terms of why it feels like it's having a moment right now, especially with women in the sector. Do you remember what you said? If you can speak to that a little bit.
Doodle, I don't remember what I had for breakfast, but I but I think the whole thing about women in agriculture is that they have been sort of shadowed by men in the past, and women are now coming to the forefront in the agricultural sector and finding that they can do value added businesses off of the farm. They're achieving higher positions in management with organizations. And I think that that comes from us recognizing the contribution that women have made in the agricultural sector. So I think that if you're a woman in agriculture today, that you will, you have the opportunity to get more funding. You have the opportunity to stand out in the industry itself because you are a woman in the industry. Did I say that before?
I think you did. Yeah. I just thought it was another thing that we talked about last week, and I thought we should probably mention that as well because yeah, it feels like it's having a moment, but to your point, yeah, like women have always been there, just in the shadows more. But it's great that they're finally getting the recognition and the opportunities as they deserve.
Well, and that's why we hold the program of Advancing Women conferences, because I think the more you can understand your financial management details and be independent, and the more you understand where you fit in the industry and where you'd like to fit and know what your goals are, and then have that confidence to go after it, I think that's where women are really rising up. You have to remember that in agriculture in 2013 and prior, you never saw an advertisement in the paper or in a website that promoted a woman's image. It was always a man standing in a field at sunset with beautiful wheat and barley at his knees. But you never saw a woman, a woman's image. And that's why in 2014, I started Advancing Women, because we wanted to bring that profile up and to have women feel more confident that they are making a contribution. So women in the industry today, they have a huge advantage, I think, simply because they are women.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So Laura and Jocelyn, you're both sort of working within that like social impact, like climate change solutions realm. Can you each speak a little bit about maybe some advice you have on building a resilient and sustainable business within these sectors that can adapt to, environmental shifts, maybe market fluctuations or unforeseen challenges, like the pandemic we had a few years ago. Laura, maybe I'll pass to you first.
Well, it's a challenge, that's
Yeah.
for sure. And so one of the things when we onboard interns and volunteers, we have an amazing team. People reach out and say, when I ask them, why do you want to volunteer and work for free for us? They say, we believe in your mission. We believe that what it is that you're trying to achieve is something that needs to be accomplished. We need to get information that's not siloed. Now, having said that, is like, then it's constantly changing. So we pivot because of the changes. But one of the things I tell people before they join the team is that you really have to fall in love with ambiguity, because that's one guaranteed that's going to happen. You're going to deal with ambiguity every single day. Things change all the time. And so, and I know, yeah, life is like that, but in agriculture and agriculture technology, things are, rapidly changing. Last week, Friday, I was at ag robotics session with the ag robotics working group on Friday. And then Monday, the University of Waterloo did another ag robotics symposium. And the things that are happening are radical, And so for me, who's like constantly got my hands in the pie, and constantly researching and getting all this information in, I can see it, but for farmers, it's like they have only limited time capacity that a lot of people forget about. And what that means is that they don't have the time to resource the answer when there might be like, when they start to look for it, there's 6 or 7 answers out there. What they need is somebody who they can depend on to say, okay, I have this question about this new technology and I want to incorporate aquaponics into our operation. How do I do that? And how do I go about it so that everything doesn't, fall to pieces? And so these are the kind of information, and it goes across, all kinds of things, protected agriculture, open field stuff. And so it's to keep abreast of the research, to find the people that you and the information that you want to follow, and follow it. You know, like really follow it, so that even if you now you know, reply to everything, respond to every newsletter, and then weed it all out and find the ones that you believe in, so that you can keep abreast of what's changing, because it's changing so fast
Mhm.
that you need somebody to tell you what the changes are.
Mhm. Brilliant. Thank you,
That
Laura.
made sense.
No, it did. Absolutely. Thank you. Jocelyn, how about yourself? Like, advice on ensuring that you can build out like a resilient, robust business to deal with these sort of shifts.
Well, I mean, so one nice thing is a lot of farm-based businesses are inherently resilient in that they have multiple revenue streams. So, if we look to something like a farm operation that is growing a variety of crops over the course of the year, and then perhaps also, tapping maple trees for maple syrup, and perhaps in the off season or keeping bees. It's nice that in agricultural businesses, there already is this idea of diversifying your revenue streams. And the more that you can do that, the better, because the less dependent you are on any one thing. We know Mother Nature loves this idea of diversity and duplication, and there's a good reason for that. Something that I learned sort of the hard way is that it's much nicer to build a business based on recurring revenue that you can anticipate and track and depend on than a product-based business, because you really don't know when that next purchase is going to come in, when that revenue is going to come in, and the cost of customer acquisition can be very high. And I did just want to loop back to the earlier question for Iris, because this is something that I'm trying to figure out, and I'd love to open it up to everyone. And that is that there really seems to be a renaissance among young people. Not everyone, but certainly I cannot tell you how many people come apply for a job here at the farm and really have no farming experience, no background in this space. And when I ask them what they want to be doing in 10 years, blue sky thinking, so many of them tell me they want to have their own homestead, they want to grow their own vegetables, have a few goats, homeschool their children, and sell their own honey. And on one hand, I'm like, oh yeah, that is the dream, right? And then on the other hand, my heart just breaks for them, because I'm just like, oh man, you got another thing coming at you here, kid. Because it's just so challenging to go into agriculture when you don't have a family farm to inherit, when you don't have a background in this space. So I really see that there is this subsector, this generation of young people that want to leave the city, that want to get back to nature and grow things regeneratively, see the problems in our big ag system, and are keen to work on those problems, but they don't have access to land, they don't have the agricultural skills, they don't have the business knowledge, and they really don't have a plan on how they're going to get to that 10-year dream. I know we heard earlier about some training programs, which I think is great, but we see so much farmland being conglomerated by large corporations. I would just love to see someone come up with a solution that gives these young people an opportunity, a foot in the door, and really rewrites the story of where agriculture is going here in Canada.
Excellent. And Jocelyn, I'm gonna have to admit, I am one of those people that is like, oh, I would love that. Not so much to build a business out of it, but that I think, it being like living in the city and seeing all the crazy things that are happening in the world, it seems like a bit of a dream or a fantasy, I suppose, to kind of just to move out and just have life be a little bit more simple and all of that. But absolutely, to your point, so many people don't have access to land, and that is one of the very different things that you need to you need to make that dream a reality. Paraminder, you have a question, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah. So I have a question regarding this because, as I mentioned in the beginning, that again, Jocelyn, we have a lot of candidates here. Same, some of them do have farm experiences, maybe not from Canada, but from their respective countries. But again, a lot of them have no farming experience or like no agriculture experience, but they kind of want to explore the field. What would be your suggestions in terms of, and our program is a lot flexible. Yes, we do have a curriculum that we follow, but there is a little bit of flexibility on like what we can include in the curriculum, right? So what would you suggest? What are the things that we can include in the curriculum or that we can train them on that would help the agriculture companies in Canada or Alberta in general, so that we have people that can actually that can be incorporated in the workforce. So what would you suggest on that?
Well, I mean, I can only speak from my perspective, which is unique given my business and my background. However, I know, one thing I look for when I'm interviewing candidates is even if they haven't had an opportunity to work on the farm, have they incorporated a love of agriculture, horticulture in other ways? So, working and volunteering at a community garden, or of course, in their backyard, or they, even a passionate houseplant collector. Another thing that I always look for is experience doing physical manual labor outdoors. Are you comfortable lifting 30 pounds repeatedly outdoors in all types of weather? The answer has to be yes. And more importantly, I want to sort of see that something that reflects that ability, because I unfortunately have learned the hard way that if they don't have that kind of experience, then chances are they're going to get here and they're going to last less than a week. And then last but not least would be business and in particular marketing skills. So, those are easily transferable. And to the point made earlier around how quickly technology is advancing, I'm certainly at the point now where I rely on my younger staff to incorporate things like AI into our marketing activities. And so if they're able to bring that from a different industry, then I know that we're going to be able to benefit from that.
Brilliant, excellent question. Thank you so much, Paraminder.
I can just add to that.
Please, yes.
I think that because we got so many people who want to volunteer for our startup now, that they're not working hard, right? They don't have their hands in the soil. That's a different thing. But when we ran our market garden down in the Caribbean, and it was hot, like it was really hot. And so what we did is that we brought in international farming volunteers. So they got a small little seaside cottage with no running water or electricity in exchange for 5 hours of hard work in an organic garden. And so, and we taught that regenerative agriculture skills. And I think that what we learned was that it was the folks who worked out the best and who were the best fit were the ones who had like a beginner's mind, in that they wanted to learn, and they were open-minded about all the various things that they might learn and challenges that they might face. Like they didn't know that they might wake up on Thursday morning and like half of the pepper field had been eaten by, giant caterpillars, And so I think that when it comes to, we need to encourage young people, whether they're new immigrants or young people or young women, to go into this field, because the field is, the agriculture is diminishing. And so, and the farmers are getting old. And I think that one of the things to answer your question is to start with agribusiness foundation skills. Show people and encourage them and give them the connections of, yes, there is money to help them start up because we need new farmers, and to connect them to that money, and then to teach them responsibly how to get things going with that money, and to have continued support for at least the first 3 years, because those are the toughest. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Excellent, excellent advice. Um, and I'm also seeing some folks in the chat as well, connecting each other to other people. I saw there was one question from Saydat for information on support for Black women in agriculture. So thank you so much, Jessie. Tia Upshaw is a fantastic person to get connected to. I mean, in that space, but also just in general, a fantastic person to know. One of our attendees, Chana, who I don't know if she's still in the session now, but she talked around wanting to know more about regulation and navigating the regulatory landscape within this sector. And so a question to all of our speakers, as well as anyone else who has experience in this, how can business owners prepare themselves within this space to understand that landscape of regulation that will be relevant to their business? Whoever would like to go, Iris or Laura or
I can talk about it for a second and then Iris can bring in her more experienced. But I'll tell you, when I talk to farmers, and I mean, this is like some of the farmers in my area here where I live is farm country. And there's a lot of big oil seed farmers. So, 50,000 acres, 20,000 acres, that kind of thing. And folks that I've talked to who have been in this for generations and generations, they can't keep track of the regulations. They're frustrated and stymied by the change of regulations and by their not being aware of the change of the regulations until something goes awry. So it's a huge challenge for even the most experienced farmer. I think for young farmers, they need to find an organization that fits their subject matter or their farm and join it and mentor with experts who are already part of the organization. Because it's a minefield, the regulations.
Thank you, Laura. And Iris, anything to add there?
Yeah.
Oh, so sorry, Iris, it's your microphone isn't working. You're unmuted. Oh, I think you're back now.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Iris, it's gone again. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Not it. Can't hear you, unfortunately.
I know you have good things to say.
No.
Yeah.
It's like it comes through every second or so, but then it doesn't come in.
That better?
That is better, yes.
I just changed the system. There we go. I fully agree with Laura if you're talking about farmers. Farmers there, you've always got your farm organization, your grower organization, whether it's canola or potato or lentil or pea or pulse growers or wheat and barley growers. They are the best to understand the regulatory, same with dairy and egg and chicken. When you're talking about a private company that is, say, in food innovation, you have to search out people like FEED, the Food Entrepreneurs Development Group in Saskatoon. So you have to really search out, when you start getting more and more specific, you have to start searching out some of these organizations, and to go to them directly is the best thing that you can do. However, you have to be open-minded, you have to challenge, you have to ask a lot of questions, you have to leave with a full understanding of what that organization does and how it can help you, and expect to go back to them 2 or 3 times as you work through what you're wanting to do and understand the regulation that's at hand and be prepared that it's going to change. So if you're a farmer, like Laura said, joining an organization, the grower organization of the crop that you grow is the best, number one. Number two is find that industry association or the government representative. And don't forget about the retail locations as well, people that you buy your products from, the vendors that you buy your products from, and the people that you sell to. They also, for example, if you're a grain farmer, go to Cargill, Parrish and Heimbecker, somebody who deals with the product that you're growing, and they would know the regulations as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Iris. And I shared feed in the chat if anyone is interested in knowing more about that. Kathleen also put in a comment there, and Kathleen, if you'd like to come on microphone, but you just mentioned that basically making sure you add a year onto the time frame that you think it might take for you to achieve
Yeah.
any of your
Hi,
regulation.
can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Please.
Okay, yeah. When I was doing my master's project actually on a non-approved soil amendment, although it was used in surface water remediation for municipalities, it was not approved for use in soil across like in Canada at all. And we never dreamt for a second that it was going to take the time frame it did. And actually my supervisor, my first supervisor, he got in major trouble because he didn't follow the regulations properly. And I actually, as the student, put a halt to everything, and it says, no, we need to back up the horse here, do it properly, because I can't afford to have my project get messed up. So they actually started implementing different things that shouldn't have even been included. The soil amendment that, like the project that I was working on, was actually doing reclamation of potash mine slime tailings. So in actuality, it should never have been an issue because it was a contained site. But Agriculture Canada and the CFIA said, no, we're going to expand the horizon on this, and you have to meet the expanded horizon. So although you may not think that they can add other caveats onto what you want to do, they can and they will if they kind of so see fit to do that. So you need to kind of add a whole other percentage onto the timeline and make sure that you answer those questions as succinctly and perfectly as possible, and maybe even kind of foresee, in a sense, some of the potential questions that they might be asking for whatever it is that you're trying to get approved. In my case, it was it was a non-approved soil amendment. We did, in fact, or my research did make it so that the cross-linked polyacrylamide hydrogel that I had been working with was eventually approved for use in soil. And it is now used within, the oil and gas industry, within agriculture and such. And it has been used globally elsewhere, within the horticulture industry and stuff, but it wasn't used here. It is now used here, especially in the oil and gas industry. Not so much horticulture because of some of its confinements, but those regulatory hurdles can really catch you off guard. And you gotta keep a cool head, make sure you answer everything as succinctly as possible and as quickly as possible, and just go forth and make sure don't lose your head on it. Don't, if they come across with something that totally blindsides you, do your best, just maintain, your composure and work through it. And if you really don't know the answer, tell them that you don't know the answer, but you're going to kind of go through your network and see if there's anybody that can help you work through it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if does that kind of help?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your perspective and adding to the conversation on that. And I love that you mentioned there as well, like if you don't know, reach out to your network. Like that's a great example of when you can leverage your community, your network, your mentor. So thank you so much for adding to that.
You're very welcome.
Jocelyn, I saw you nodding quite a bit, and I'm curious to know how did you navigate it with your business?
You know what? So I'm actually learning a ton here. I am very lucky because we, first of all, don't create a product that is edible. So certainly we actually, with some of our investor funding, are working on our CFIA approval for organic inputs. I guess the only thing I can say is that sometimes there's a workaround especially if you're a smaller business. So one example would be with packaging. You're in fact not required to have bilingual packaging if you're selling the majority of your product within 100 kilometers of your production facility. So for us, we were able to have our product on the market as a soil amendment, not a fertilizer product. So the one thing is, I have to be very careful in any print material, and in fact all the time, not to refer to it as a fertilizer. It is not approved as such, and that's because we haven't done the trials, which are now getting done. But that, again, sort of, you can kind of maybe appreciate that my approach has always been very scrappy, very bootstrapped. So again, you know, don't get overwhelmed. I spent a ton of time before I even started the business trying to figure out all the legislation, read all the documents from the government, and in retrospect, I was being overly risk averse, and should have just, you know, dove in. And if you're doing something wrong, sooner or later they're gonna let you know, and you can deal with it then.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much, Jocelyn. And when we've going to go back to the networking aspect of this, and you know, building your network, today's a great example of putting yourself into spaces where you can meet new people and build out that community. And of course, Iris, with advancing women, it's another great avenue to do that. Can you each maybe provide some like effective strategies for building these meaningful connections and building a supportive network within the agricultural community? And you can base it off of what you've done in the past. Just, you know, for entrepreneurs to know where they can go and how they can ensure that you know, they're building the best relationships and community for themselves. Iris, I'll go to you first for this.
Yeah, I think network is the most important. And I think where you start with that network is, if you have a mentor, start with him or her and connect to the people that they know. Don't be hesitant to ask. Asking people is the #1 question about being in business. Ask somebody for help. Ask, who do you know that I can reach out to? Who can I connect with? Either have them connect you, which is always the best thing, because a lot of people don't read, reply, or want emails or text messages anymore from people that they don't know. Try on LinkedIn. I did an example. About 3 days ago, I went to LinkedIn and I said, I'm going to link in with a whole bunch of people that are involved in this area of agriculture. And I sent personal messages to each one, and I didn't get one response. And so people at this point in time in life are just not responding to phone calls, emails, or texts. So number 2 is be patient. Be patient and continue to go after people. Ask everybody you know for somebody that you should know. Who should I reach out to? Who should I make a connection with? And then follow that through. And then number 3 is keep in contact with those people in your network. Don't just make a connection one day and then say, well, that's enough with that. I know them. I'm done. Keep up with that person, because that person is continuously making new connections in their network. So never leave your networks dry. Keep going back to them, even if it is a phone call every 6 months. Go back to them, give them an update of where you are. Ask them more questions about what you can be involved in with them, how they can help you. So that's what building a network really is. It's not just collecting business cards or contacts. It's using those people over and over and over again in a synergistic fashion. So you have to be ready to give something back to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you for those pointers.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, you have experience with building both like a local network and global as well in terms of those partnerships. What was that like for you, and how are they how are they different, or are they different in how you communicate with them and how you build them?
Thank you. Firstly, there's huge and diverse cultural differences. Yeah. For instance, in the Caribbean, where I first started to pilot, though it's an island region, yes, each one of those islands is its own country, has its own Ministry of Agriculture, its own cultural nuances and levels of corruption. And so that I started off in a place that was an enormous challenge. So since then, things have been less challenging in terms of networking. I was an outsider. It didn't matter that I'd been there for 15 years. I was still an outsider, really. And so I was in a challenging position. Nevertheless, I spoke to the folks who were the farmers, you know, and when they realized that, oh, this woman actually knows the problem, you know, because she's lived it, that made a difference. First of all, you need to build trust, you know. But then when it came to networks in terms of, I just reached out to everyone. I reached out to the universities, you know, the big agriculture universities in the Caribbean and Latin America and Canada, and other places. I joined food accelerators globally, and just, it took a lot of work. I worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, all through COVID. And I built up, you know, one point in Silicon Valley, they had said to me, yes, what you were doing is empire building. And so I spent a lot of time just making all these connections. And a lot of times, to me, even to me, it didn't make any sense. But it was like all the pieces that were necessary were kind of being put in place. And at the time, the connections didn't really click, even to me. But now they do. You know, so whether it's a research organization in the Netherlands or, you know, a forum in Africa, there are people who now, I don't so much reach out to people, is that people reach out to me and say, we like your solution and we'd like to talk to you more about it. And the calls come from everywhere. I mean, literally around the globe. Sometimes it's extremely overwhelming.
But so fantastic at the same time that
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, we're looking at possible projects in Somalia, maybe Jamaica, you know, here in Ontario, India. So I just kind of put it all out there and have faith in that it's going to somehow culminate into something that makes sense. I mean, I will guide it. It's not, you know, throwing spaghetti at the wall, but yeah. Sorry.
No, not at all. Sure,
I
you
don't
have your hand
suggest everyone use that process though.
up.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm so happy for this amazing networking. I would like to thank you for bringing all the women in the agri-tech together. And I'm sorry because I have to leave for another meeting. I would like to get the opportunity to thank you all for this great event, and also following the topic that our speaker, if I pronounce correctly, Iris mentioned about the mentoring and mentorship, and how like have the pure mentor, right? So these are could be something very useful. In my journey, always having mentor was wonderful for me, and I do mentoring as well. So in case if you want to have just mentoring for agri-tech, that maybe would be a great idea for just have the mentoring for women who are interested to go to agriculture and agriculture with technology. And I was volunteer as a mentor with Startup Canada before, but in general. But if you want to have something specifically for agri-tech, that might be a good idea. So that network is going to increase. Just sharing an idea. If you like we can do that, like just have just the topic for women in agri-tech. Yes, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Great. I'll take that on board. Thank you so much for joining.
Sure, sure. And sorry, I have to leave, but I'm going to stay connect with you on LinkedIn and we'll check out the recorded video later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Shura.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye.
All right, so I've noticed we're having like a small drop off, and I want to ensure that people get the networking breakout rooms. So I think we'll get started on those because they are fantastic, great way for you to meet everyone in the room. So with these, we'll do I think 10 minutes, and we'll do 3 rounds, and I think we'll aim to have about 3 to 4 people in the room. Again, this is a great way for you to meet each other. One sort of 2 housekeeping rules is, you know, of course, come with your questions. If there is anything that you wanted to ask that perhaps you didn't feel comfortable asking in this setting, these are completely private and they're not recorded. And also if you feel you have any advice that you can give to someone else, it's very much a give and take knowledge sharing environment. And then the second housekeeping is, of course, just to be respectful of everyone and ensuring that it's a safe space for everyone in the room. So I'm going to get these recreated. I'm just going to, sorry, what am I doing? Let's do I'm doing this all myself, trying to make sure I'm engaging with you, but also making sure that I'm getting all these correct. So I'm doing it for 10 minutes, I think. Yes, we are. And so I'm going to open up the rooms and you should get an invite on your screens now.